So I am very itchy. The spider has come back. It bit me twice and it bit my girlfriend once. So I'm gonna have to go spider hunting because this thing is a punk. Uh, Spider just wants to bite everyone. Not okay. Um, I gotta deal with life sometimes. Random weird life. But oh well. I wanted to record again yesterday, but I ended up not being able to because life. And, you know, I thought about trying to ask the girls to be quiet and, all that stuff. But I mean, they gotta have a life too. And I didn't want to ask them to not live or whatever, They're just doing normal things. It's just normal things are crinkly and loud, and it's like not really conducive to uploading YouTube videos, especially since for whatever reason these record somewhat quiet. I'm not sure why. Don't know. But there were a couple of things. Um First of all is that I haven't talked to my dad again since he decided that he's gonna call me my birth name no matter what, and that he doesn't think that changing gender exists, despite all of the evidence otherwise. Like, some people have a third chromosome, some people have all the characteristics of the opposite, but they have the chromosomes of something else. There's tons of intersex people. I read a statistic. Apparently, intersex people are probably more common than people with red hair. We've all met someone with red hair. So it's not that unlikely that you've met someone intersex. And yet we make such a giant deal out of gender. It's like stupid. I don't get it. Gender gender is identity. Gender is not this big controversial subject, except that we don't know enough about it. Like, we're still studying it as a race, um, of human beings, definitely. We don't know everything about gender yet. But at the same time, like, people act like animals never change gender, and they do all the time. Tons and tons of species of animals. People act like creatures never take on other roles even if they didn't change gender, which they do, like in the wild. I mean, plants come with both sex organisms and, just the capability to reproduce as either quote unquote gender. Like, animals change outright their sex, plants can choose their sex. And, like, it's ridiculous to me that humans are so close-minded about something that's so natural and seen over and over repeatedly in nature itself. There are homosexual animals, there are even asexual animals. Like, so why would those things be so foreign or strange? I mean, go look at the freaking bonobos. If you think animals don't like sex and that animals give a damn about gender to have sex, if you think animals only have sex to reproduce and they never do it for fun, go actually get educated. Stop acting like humans are somehow against the natural order of things if they're not exactly fitting into these specific boxes. Because That's not how any of it works. I don't understand why people are so uncomfortable with something so completely normal in the rest of like the planet. I am less sad now about my dad. I've cried about it. I've been upset about it. Whatever. He probably talked to my grandma or something, and that was that. I'm less sad, and I'm more just like irritated, and it's pitiful. It's pitiful, and it bothers me that people are so backwards. I don't understand it. People make such stupid arguments to things, and I don't know why. Why would you resist things that are good? It's good for people to actually lead a happy life instead of being suicidal. It's a good thing. So why would you be against it? It doesn't cost you, it costs them. And you're expecting someone to be willing to live in a way that you would never accept living, or else you accept living because someone convinced you that you have to, or else you're going to hell. But that's not right. You're not given like this life to spend the whole time wishing you could die. You're gonna die eventually. You might as well enjoy the time between now and then. And you're not gonna enjoy that time unless you're yourself. It's important to be yourself, to find yourself, to spend life with yourself. Because you're gonna anyway. So be the you that you actually want to be. Like, it doesn't make sense to do otherwise. Stop living for other people or other expectations or religion or freaking whatever it is. If you're believing in a God who acts like they hate you, then that's your decision, I guess. But it doesn't make any sense. It's not it's not the way that nature acts at all. And another thing, people go on and on about how God made Adam and Eve and it was a man and a woman. Well, big freaking deal. So that means that even if magically all of this is all true, and there's a God, and that's what God did, and he was all big on man and woman right off the bat, that doesn't mean that every single person that came from them was a man and a woman. I mean, if we have the ability for our chromosomes to not be in a set perfect pattern, then God would have made that too. God made the ability for humans to produce intersex. God made the ability for people to be produced with an abundance of testosterone or an abundance of estrogen. God made the ability for us to reproduce and sometimes come out with a different gender than the one that is visible when you're first born and the doctor just declares, "Oh, I think I see this genitalia, so this is obviously what the baby is." Well, and then later on in life they do a scan and oh no, that's not what the baby is at all. Is the doctor called a kook? No, because people just accept that instead of letting the kid decide, letting the kid grow up. And that doesn't mean you need to raise every kid gender fluid or something like that. I realize like, societal norms are unfortunately effed up, especially in this country, but they're also very traditional based and they're probably not going anywhere for my lifetime at least. And that sucks. So, yeah, raising your kid is just totally gender fluid will probably confuse them as they're growing up. But it being open to your kid being something other than a random doctor who happened to be there when they popped out the chute declares, "Oh, I declare." Sorry. I lived a long time in Tennessee, and sometimes it comes out. I absolutely hated that place and everything that happened to me there. Every single part of me will never live in Tennessee again. So, but there are not all terrible people there, so I shouldn't have been so derogatory. But at the same time, some random person being there and catching your baby and saying, "Here's what I think it is not actually proof of your kid's gender. He's just declaring a sex because the baby popped out. Gender and even sex sometimes are not based on the genitalia that's immediately visible. For an intersex person, they might have every single part that's a boy, and then they have something resembling a vagina, but they have the testicles, they have everything else, and still get called a girl. Like, they're not a girl. You don't you don't look at a pie. I mean, this is probably a bad example, but whatever. You don't look at a pie and say, I know exactly what kind of pie that is based on the crust on the outside. It's based on what's on the inside. What's inside a person determines what they are, not whatever is immediately first impression. If a person has all the functionality of someone of a different sex, then maybe they're of that different sex. That's for them to tell you because their brain's the one that knows. Their brain's the one that identifies them. Children know their gender by the age of 6 because their brain tells them. You don't you don't you don't see a bunch of animals in the wild being like, "Oh my god, what are you doing? Why are you acting like a different gender?" Like, it's a very accepted normal thing in the wild. Like, anyone who says it's unnatural is just completely uneducated. Anyway, it makes me angry in a way, but it's mostly just like irritation, like pity. I used to associate my dad with safety all my growing up years. But once I became an adult and I actually introduced him to myself, my dad rejected me instantly. Like when I came out as a lesbian, he said, "Why are you hurting me? Why are you doing this to me?" And I'm like, I'm saying I've been hurting, and he just couldn't hear that. He was like, you need to not do this. Don't come out. Don't do this. And I'm just like, not being out, I was suicidal. I was miserable. I was constantly just in a complete dark pit of despair, of depression and self loathing. And you want me to go back to that? And he's like, "Yes, it's better than this." And it's just like, he apologized later on in life for saying that. But at the same time, he didn't come to my wedding and he doesn't accept me. He has always made this big deal out of wishing that he could have gotten us away from my mother and how he felt like he was a bad dad because he didn't save us, especially me, that he didn't save me from all of the crap. And I mean, when I was a kid, he did save me. 2 months out of the year, I knew that there was another way to live, and that did save me. But you know what? He's never actually loved me because he's never actually known me when I was a kid. And once he did know me, he just couldn't ever accept me. Like, he goes on and on about feeling like he was a bad father, but he chooses to reject his kid now. All the guilt that he has about not being able to rescue us, I don't need him to have magically been able somehow to rescue us. My mother was super conniving. She still is. And she can get people to believe crazy stuff. And she is super manipulative. She gets her way. She knows how to get her way. And she tells such detailed lies, she believes them herself. She genuinely believes her own lies. She remembers things happening different than everyone else remembers. And she's like, oh no, you're just saying stuff. You're making stuff up. And she thinks things happened different than they did. She does not think she was abusive at all. She doesn't. She thinks she maybe made some mistakes, but what parent hasn't? That's what she thinks. Because she believes her own bullshit. I mean, how can my dad compete when he's not that way? He's not conniving, he's not manipulative. He's a very direct person, and he's very, very, straightforward. I don't think that he should have magically had the skills to combat someone that he was not at all prepared or educated enough or rich enough or whatever to combat. Like he is human. He has limitations. I don't blame him for not being able to rescue us more than he did. I don't. I don't hold that against him at all, even if he holds it against himself. What my issue is where in the hell is he now? Yeah, he regrets he didn't get to be there as much when we were kids as he wished he could have. But he can be there now. He could be there now, but he just won't. And I love my father. I love him very much. I appreciate my father. Worked super hard to provide for us. I would not have my associate's degree if my dad didn't help me in college. I worked 2 part-time jobs, and I still wouldn't have gotten through debt-free without my dad. And he couldn't afford to give hardly nothing. I think it was like $6,000 a year or something like that. I don't remember exactly. But the point is he still tried. He worked hard and he tried. He did that for all his kids. He tried. He tried to help us get jobs. He tried to help us get, settled. He tried to help us move into places. He helped us work on our cars. Like, he spent hours and hours trying to, you know, build memories for us. Like, he did try. And then I became an adult and I actually introduced him to myself. And he has struggled to try ever since because he doesn't like me. The person that I am, the person who believes everyone should be treated well, everyone, that system should be in place so that everyone's treated well, that we should base our systems on the utmost of our knowledge, not the least of our knowledge, that we should not choose to be willfully ignorant and base systems on that ignorance. Me being someone who does think that humans aren't above the rest of nature. My father would never choose to hang around with me, the person. It doesn't matter if I'm a good person. It doesn't matter if I'm a person of character. And that's hard. That is frustrating, and that doesn't make me grieve as much as it makes me just see him as pitiful. He would miss out on good people being in his life just because they're different. And I realize part of it's how he was raised, and part of it is trying to stay complying with how he was raised or whatever. But he's a grown ass man. I mean, he has a choice. As much as I am grateful for my father, I don't understand. I don't understand anyone who willfully chooses to be ignorant about things. It's the stupidest thing. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Yesterday, the Supreme Court passed that the Discrimination Act protects also LGBT people. That it says you can't discriminate based on sex, and that includes sexual orientation and transgender. That's a massive thing. And I've seen a ton of people I'm related to, go on and on. People who are supposed to be my friends go on and on. And it's frustrating. First of all, some people are like, oh, wasn't that already a thing? And technically, it should have been. But it takes a Supreme Court to actually say, yes, this is what this means. Yes, that should have been what it meant the whole time. As someone who has been asked to quit a job because someone there found out I was gay after years of working there, I I volunteered with a children's nonprofit, children's foundation thing. I I volunteered for 8.5 years every single like week, and for part of the time, almost every single day. Years and years and years. And the original person in charge of the place saw that I just wanted to help and didn't care. And then someone else came in charge, and it was like, whatever, it's not a big deal. I didn't think. And I kept doing my volunteer work for several more years. And then the same building where I was doing my volunteer work, I worked as a custodian. So they, had the children's nonprofit out of the same building. And well, someone who worked under the guy in charge found out I was gay and went to him about it. And I had never once encouraged a kid to grow up and be gay. I had never once been like, oh, yes, let me, like, teach you some other thing or whatever. I mean, the entire point was just to give kids a safe, um, wholesome environment. It wasn't about anything political. It was about making kids feel safe and making kids feel, like encouraged to be creative, to draw, to dance together and sing together and make friends. Like it was very simplistic things that we were trying to accomplish. We were trying to help kids. Like they would go out and just take food and music and stuff out to kids in not that great neighborhoods. Like it wasn't about anything else. And the one person went to him about it, and he Didn't even talk to me about it. Nothing beforehand, didn't ask me about it. Just walked up to me while I was walking along with my family one day and said, "Hey, I found out that this is a thing. You're done." And it was just like, really? In a random public hallway? No, nothing. After years and years and years of volunteering there, I was just like, oh my gosh. And then, of course, the person who owned the building found out, and I lost my job as a custodian because one person found out I was gay. One single person found out I was gay. And I lost my job, and it wasn't like a perfect job. I was a custodian, but I had the best boss I had ever had. I had work hours that were functional to me and good, and all of that. And I could get off work and immediately go volunteer because it was the same place. And, you know, one person found out I was gay and I lost my job completely. Not just my volunteering, not just years and years of helping, but also I had to just take whatever job I could get the next one. And it was a shitty job. It was terrible. And it's like, again, I knew all these people for years. I knew all these people for more than a decade. Like, they knew me. They knew that I was a good person. And it didn't matter because one person found out I was gay. How dare I be a lesbian? How dare I? Even though I'd never once brought a girlfriend or done something where it was like gonna affect the kids or something like that. Like I've never been a person with a big agenda or whatever to like make everyone see things my way or no way. Like that's not me. And it's just like I don't get people. People are stupid. All these people are like, oh, well now that, you know, this is past, all these gay people are gonna have to insta lawsuits. You can't fire them, so you better not hire them in the first place. And it's just like, really? That's not what it's about. I had no health insurance for years and years because I lost that job. I had no paycheck for until I got to the next job, and I had to take like a terrible job just to get by, just to get a paycheck. Like my life was derailed. I couldn't pay rent. Like I started starving, and I starved for a couple of years. I ate one thing of ramen a day, and I lost so much weight that my entire family and even my girlfriend started freaking out that I got so scrawny. And they were all really worried about my health. My parents would just give me boxes of macaroni and cheese and stuff, just trying to get me to eat something because I couldn't afford to feed myself, and I didn't want to tell them just exactly how povertous I was because the whole thing hurt me so bad. Because one random person found out I was gay. And that doesn't have to happen. That shouldn't have been ever a thing that could happen. You shouldn't lose your job just because some one single person found out you're gay. Even if for some reason the Children's Foundation didn't want me volunteering anymore because they had some convoluted, terrible reason. Even that shouldn't have happened, but at least, you know, I mean, things are always a little difficult with children because, they probably didn't want any drama from any parents who didn't want their kids around a gay person and they didn't want to deal with the drama of parents throwing fits. Like, drama sucks. So I don't understand why that meant that I also had to lose my job as a custodian, like not working with the children at all. But I got asked to quit by the highest people there. And again, my poor boss, my immediate boss, he was like, there's got to be some way to work around this and stuff. People are like, oh, this means that you're gonna not be able to enforce a dress code or something at your work, and that's not what this means at all. The judges passing this doesn't mean, oh, look, you didn't want someone to come in wearing all rainbows, and now they're wearing all rainbows, and you can't fire them. It means that if someone is gay, you can't discriminate against them. That's all it means. If they can do the job and they're doing a good job, you don't discriminate against them. That's all. It's like, why should it matter who their family is when they go home? What their family looks like when they go home should have nothing to do with whether or not they can do their job. Like, do you ask everyone else what their family looks like as well when people get hired and everything? Do you go around and say, "Hey, oh, you're a single parent? Well, that's not a man and a woman raising children together, so that's not good enough. You're not getting hired." Oh, you're an interracial couple? Yeah, that's not a pure white family. Sorry, you're not getting hired. Like, what the? What do you give a crap what my family looks like? It's my family. If I'm doing a good job, which every employer I've ever had said I was doing a good job, even the one time I actually did get fired, which was a ridiculous circumstance and everything, but even that time, I was still considered a good worker. I didn't get fired because I was a bad worker. I got fired because of totally crazy circumstances. Like, it's it's never been an issue that I've been a bad worker, but it has before been an issue that I was gay. And it shouldn't have been an issue. And that's all the Supreme Court saying. They're saying that your sex should not determine whether or not you get to work. And sex doesn't just mean guy or girl. Sex also means sexual orientation and if you're transgender. That's all it means. And yet that's such a massive, huge thing. People like to be idiots. I don't know. I'm I've never been okay with the way that a lot of people in the United States act. Like even when I was a kid, I had a problem with it. The nationalism and the freaking I mean, the people who live here act like the people after the Crusades, where anyone who was different was automatically not okay because they live in so much freaking fear. And I don't want to live in fear of a bunch of stupid stuff. And people here like to be like, oh, freedom of speech means, whatever. And then they get upset when there's consequences to what they say. And it's like, that's not what freedom of speech means. If a job that you're working at is non discriminatory and you say discriminatory things and you get fired, that doesn't mean that they violated your First Amendment right. You still said whatever you said. You're allowed to say it without going and being imprisoned. Congratulations. But it doesn't mean that there's no consequence. If I came to a job and I was like, hey, I'm Rain, you know, and that I wanted that to be my name, cool. If I came to a job and I said, hey, I want to be Lil, cool, whatever. The job doesn't care. If I came to the job and I said, hey, I want my name to be, I don't know, my dad always wanted a son named Jackson, so Jackson, which is not going to be my name, but, you know, it's like, it doesn't hurt the employer to call you a name. It's not a big deal. But if I came to a job and I was like, spewing a bunch of conspiracy nonsense, and they were like, yeah, this isn't making a healthy work environment. We need you to stop. And I kept spewing conspiracy nonsense and they fired me. That would be completely within their right and okay. I'm also frustrated because people make excuses when something's obviously blatantly untrue. And they're not just willfully being ignorant, but when that ignorance is shown untruthful, they make excuses. I used to live in Washington State, close to Seattle. I have lots of friends in Seattle, and Fox News posted that the people in Seattle are having this violent protest. They even photoshopped gunmen into the pictures and lied to people about the stuff being on fire and used stock photos of like flaming areas and stuff and faked all this nonsense when in reality the people in Seattle are like completely like contented sweet little people and stuff, and they're trying to convince other people in the country that like there's this crazy turf war going on, and the police are being rioted against, and they're trying to steal this property or something. I don't even understand what they're trying to convince people of. But the point is it's been shown and proven that they photoshopped these pictures and images, and in reality it's just a bunch of people drawing on the pavement with chalk and walking their dog and shit. Like in reality there's like nothing bad happening here, and they even lied about the demands of the protests. The demands of the protests are like posted on signs at the protest. And yet Fox News came out with this big list of demands that were like completely not the ones posted on the signs at the protest. Like they're actually on signs on fences and stuff. When you go into the part of Seattle where everyone's co-opted in to just living peaceably and educating and being happy together. And there's even police officers who have been treated very amicably. The ones who aren't rioting, because there are police officers who are outright harming people, medics, and people who are from the news. And they'll say, we're from the news, and we're, wearing our identification as being part of the news, and the police officers still attack them like idiots just because they're angry at being held accountable and being asked to actually get, 2 years worth of education or 4 years worth of education before they become a cop. Like, they shouldn't be against that. They shouldn't be against being demilitarized. You're not military, you're just police officers. You don't want to be military. Don't you want to just be police officers? Like, police officers are being asked in this country to do like social work and mental health care and all this other stuff that they shouldn't even be doing. Like that funding should go to other things. That's all defund the police means, is that the police officers shouldn't even be in those situations. And yet people are rioting and acting like everyone's saying like terrible, horrible things. And it's because their news source is flat out lying to them and has been proven to have been lying to them. And yet, if you show them that, they photoshopped it or whatever, they'll make excuses for it. They're not like interested in being like, why would I watch a news source that's purposefully, intentionally lying to me? That's not good. Instead, they're like, oh, well, they were just trying to show the feeling and they just made the picture to show or to demonstrate the, truth because they couldn't take a picture right that second, but they were trying to show what's going on overall. Or, like all these excuses, and it's just like, but none of your excuses are true either. It doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. It's not even willfully ignorant. It's beyond willfully ignorant. First of all, I don't watch just one news source. I watch news sources from other parts of the world. I want to see what other countries think about things as well. But even besides that, if one of the news sources that I was looking at or I was watching or I was whatever was lying at any point and it was like a completely proven thing to that degree, you don't watch it anymore. I flat out have stopped looking at news sources before because of things like that. Because if they'll do it once, they'll probably do it again. Because if they've done it now, how many times have they done it in the past? Because maybe everything that they've ever told you on their news site, some of it is inaccurate. So why continue to use them as a news source? It doesn't make any sense. Making excuses for it doesn't make any sense. Making excuses for genuinely bad behavior, for someone openly lying, doesn't make sense to me. People make so many excuses for the guy in charge who lies all the time. And, fact checking is just lie, 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 lie. And you can go down the list of the fact checking, and it's more than one site that you can look at that does the fact checking. You can go look at more than one place, more than one source of information to see, yep, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right, it's fact checked. If the guy constantly needs to be fact checked because he lies so much, stop making excuses for his lying. Like, stop believing his lying and then stop making excuses for his lying. It's like the spider. The spider bites me and it's itchy and it leaves big welt-looking marks. I don't want to continue to have those. I'm not going to make excuses for the spider to keep damaging things. Like, I need to go find him and take him outside. He doesn't need to be living in here and chewing on people. And it's not good things the spider's doing, so why would I make excuses for the spider to stay living in my home instead of going and living outside? Like, he needs to go somewhere else. He doesn't belong here because he's not doing good things. Like, you don't make excuses for the thing that's not doing good things. And I realize different people have different definitions of what's good. And that's part of the issue. I do. I realize that. But at the same time, it's almost universal that lying isn't good. Like, even if you think something that someone does is good. If the majority of what they do is bad, then it's not a good situation. There's a lot of people who seem like they only care about one or two like issues and they don't care about anything else that hurts people or messes up systems or whatever. They don't care about anything except those one or two things, and then they will circle the wagons around those one or two things all the way until the entire rest of the world burns. I don't understand that. I don't understand that, and I don't understand people who think the United States is the center of the universe. I don't know, I guess today is just mostly venting. It's just me frustrated. I just I just see something get passed that's so good by the Supreme Court. That's so impactful. And just because it's never affected you doesn't mean it's never affected anyone. If it's never affected you, congratulations. The thing that the Supreme Court passed isn't going to affect you. If it's never affected you before, it's never going to affect you now. But for the people that it does affect, it's a big deal. And maybe there's not a shit ton of them. But if there's still some, why not make it better for them? Why not make their lives a little less miserable? Like, what is so terrible about making other people's lives better? I don't understand that. Make other people's lives better. It's worth doing. It costs you almost nothing to make someone else's life better. Like, the more you make someone else's life better, the more it comes back at you. And we could all live such better lives. We could put systems in place that make everyone's lives better. Like, it could be happy. Like, people like to say that all the happiest countries in the world are pretty much, all the same race. But they have immigrants. Like, they do. They just ask the immigrants to prove for several years that they can live in this culture and the systems that are in place that have been successful systems. And then the people get there, and for the majority part, they're like, wow, these systems mean everyone gets to be happy. I want to be happy. I'm going to cooperate with these systems. People like to say, oh, well, they have less population. But if you combine the countries together, is it really? People like to be like, oh, the United States of America, it was founded on different principles and we got to hold on to those principles and that's that. Well, first of all, it wasn't founded on the principles you think it was. But even besides that, if the principles that it was founded on are damaging now, then why continue to cling to them? Just doesn't make sense. Like, people like to say, oh, the happiest places in the world, you know, they're, not dealing with the same issues as us. Well, no shit. They have different systems in place that mean we don't deal with that shit in those countries. Or at least that's what they say. I guess I'm not in those countries, but like it's illogical to argue against something good for the majority of people. The only people who would be negatively impacted by us adopting those systems is the super, super hyper rich, like the ridiculously rich, like top 5% of rich people are the only ones who would be adversely affected. And by adversely, I mean they would be taxed. I mean, they're not actually going to have any impact on their day to day life. The way that they live is not going to be changed in any way, shape, or form. Like at all. It's just how hyper rich they can continue to grow is going to be impacted. But they're not going to stop being obscenely rich. Their day to day life is not going to be changed in any way, shape, or form. But the day to day lives of millions upon millions of people will get better. It'll get better. No one has to be getting massive bills because of a pandemic. In other countries, you don't have to have a massive bill if you catch the pandemic. They help you, even though national health care is just part of what you get. And they don't send you a giant tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars bill afterward. If you ever just go Wikipedia countries with universal health care, you'll see that almost every country on the face of the planet has some universal health care. Even most lesser countries, quote unquote lesser, third world countries, second world countries, all that, have universal health care. The only people who would be adversely impacted are the richest. Every other person would be positively impacted. That's why other countries do it. Because people work better, they live better when they're not stressed out about, I have to choose between existing or being able to pay this. Think about the plots of so many movies in this country. So many plots of movies that in other countries it would never even happen. Like, oh, look, in this movie, this dad takes over this hospital and tries to get a heart for his dying son because he can't afford it, insurance won't cover it, and he's desperate and he wants to save his son. That would not happen in other countries. Even countries that the United States looks down on have universal health care. You could go live in freaking Arabia and get universal health care, even though you judge them. Well, maybe not you, but a lot of people in the United States judge them for being, of a different religion. They still have universal health care. Like, there's no excuse for hurting people. There's no excuse for making people suffer. There's no excuse for lying about it. Yes, it would be a big overhaul, and yes, it would be a lot to do. And yes, the systems would, take some probably tweaking at first. But it would be completely worth it. People are worth it. Making the world better is worth it. People like to hate on renewable energy, and yet there's whole countries in the world who live and exist off of renewable energy. Like, people like to make excuses for violence when there's so many countries who have proven that nonviolence works. If you take away the things that make people do crime, you have less crime. A person doesn't need to steal if they're fed and they have shelter and they're taken care of. At that point, the only people left over who would steal are the genuinely like thievery thieves, like people who steal for their own pleasure. And that's not very many people. The majority of people are just trying to exist. You take away all of the misery, and people won't need to numb themselves with drugs. You take away the, constant, like, suffering. People won't need to go bankrupt all the time if you're not bankrupting them with medical bills. If people are fed, then people don't need to try to cheat systems. If they have somewhere to live, they're not going to become squatters. Take away the things that cause people to be in need, and crime goes down. It's just so simple. So much of the world is going in that direction, and I was unlucky enough to be born in a country that's not. And not everything's perfect in those countries. There's still a lot that could be better. There's still a lot of countries that could do better on LGBT stuff. People like to say, oh, if it's not about procreation, then we're not talking about it. And that's just so completely dismissive of all the poor barren people or the people who have aged out of procreation or who just don't want to procreate. And that's also dismissive of all of the people who maybe wanted to procreate, but something happened and they couldn't. It's dismissive of how it works in nature. It's dismissive of the pleasure that intimacy gives. It's not honest. I don't understand the point of clinging to lies. And people are like, oh, well, I can't afford for my taxes to go up. Your taxes are already almost as much. Go look at the tax rate for the countries that are the happiest countries in the world, and then look at the tax rate in the United States of America, and you will find that it's almost as much, and yet we have next to nothing in the way of the social systems that they do. Every kid gets educated there. There's no such thing as school lunch debt. There's no such thing as, college debt. It just is nonsensical. That systems that have been proven over years in other countries as good aren't implemented more often. But every once in a while, there's a little glimmer of hope, and that's, I guess, what the Supreme Court ruling is a little glimmer of hope. And we're so behind. I mean, this country is so far behind that it seems like extremism to say that everyone deserves health care. Like, that's not extremism. That's just what is normal everywhere else. Like, it's considered extremism to say that someone shouldn't be fired from their job just because of what their family looks like when they go home or what name they want to be called when they go to work. Like, if they're doing their job, they're doing their job. It's not extremism, it's just us trying to catch up. It's not communism, it's not discrimination against straight white dudes to say, hey, this person deserves a job too. Rights aren't pie. One person getting a slice of having their rights improved doesn't mean your rights go down. That's not how it works. And what was passed by the Supreme Court is honestly a relief after Trump taking away health rights for trans folk. I mean, I apparently picked like this terrible time to finally start getting to know myself and start considering transitioning. Like, just great timing me. Terrible timing. But at least I could have a job if my spouse's health ever improves. I could go back to being able to work. I'd like that. Having a part-time job and feeling like I'm helping people and adding to the world. I've always liked that. I've always liked the feeling of helping people. That's why I volunteered so much in my life. I like that feeling. That's part of why I like helping my spouse, is because I like helping. It's not just that I love her. Obviously I do. But I like helping people, and I've spent way too much of my life turning that into, well, I don't matter compared to helping other people. Helping other people is more important than my needs, and that's not healthy, that's not good. But helping people, period, is good. Like, I should help me too. I'm also people. I'm trying to get to a place in my life where I'm doing that, and that's more true. But yeah, it's it's such an important thing to care about others and helping them. And people, it seems like too often, are so scared of losing what they have that they just cling to it, and they're not generous hearted toward other people in this country. And it's sad. People would rather rage and throw a fit and a tantrum and be generous hearted enough to say, hey, you know what, that person should be able to have a job too. It's just frustrating. It's so frustrating. It shouldn't be considered communist or extremism to be willing to accept that everyone just wants to live. I wonder how many other people there are that when they actually introduce themselves to their parents didn't like them and didn't want to be around them and considered them extreme when all the kid wanted was just to live, was just for their parent to meet them, the real them, and the parent to just be okay with them living. It shouldn't be bad for someone to live. Anyway. I gotta go find the spider. Go catch him.